Hey everybody, this is Christian, and today we will put two really incredible NAS systems against each other, Unraid and TrueNAS. And for those of you who watched my last video about building my new storage server or my Unraid tutorial and now think I joined the Unraid fanboy club and I completely abandoned TrueNAS from my home lab, that is actually not true, because I honestly believe both systems are really great for building reliable storage systems. I just think they're made for two different types of use cases. And that's what I want to explore in this video in a bit more detail. So I'll try to make a fair comparison between both systems. I will explain in which areas they shine and where they don't, so you can easily decide for yourselves what team you want to be on, Team Orange or Team Blue. Let's find out. Before we do that, I also want to show you another great technology if you want to securely access your home network or maybe your NAS operating system from anywhere in the world, because then you definitely should use the Zero Trust Network Access platform TwinGate. A big thanks goes out to TwinGate for sponsoring this video. This is absolutely amazing. I'm using this software to get access to any of my virtual servers or manage access to my container applications from anywhere, and it is so much better and more secure than using traditional VPNs, because TwinGate always verifies every access request. If the user isn't authenticated or the device isn't verified, then it doesn't let the network request even leave the device. By the way, if you would like to learn more about it, I've also made some tutorials about TwinGate in the past that explain exactly how to install and configure this application in your home lab. We also talked about automating the configuration using Terraform or integrating it into Kubernetes. And the best is you can use TwinGate entirely for free, up to 5 users and 10 different remote networks. And it runs on your NAS, your Raspberry Pi, the cloud. It doesn't really matter what you're using in your home lab. So definitely check out TwinGate, start making your network more secure and safe. I'll leave you a link to their website in the description box down below. Alright, now let's get back to topic and let's talk about Unraid and TrueNAS. First of all, I want to say some general things about the two systems so we all know what we're talking about. And if we take a look at Unraid, this is a proprietary NAS operating system which is built on a highly customized version of the Slackware Linux distribution. It comes with various features for building a powerful home server, including things like flexible storage options, Docker applications, virtual machines, community apps, and a VPN manager. Now, TrueNAS, on the other hand, is actually a family of 3 different NAS operating systems. First, the TrueNAS Core, which is an open source system based on FreeBSD and known as the older but probably most reliable option. Then we have TrueNAS Scale, which is the newer version based on the Linux operating system, also open source, and this comes with new features for application deployments using Docker or Kubernetes. We will take a look at the details later. And finally, TrueNAS Enterprise, which is based on the core version but adds some proprietary commercial features on top of it, and this usually is only sold to professional enterprise customers. So for this comparison, I will only take a look at Unraid versus TrueNAS Scale, because I think that is the fairest comparison you can make, because both are based on Linux and they also come with quite similar features for storage, VMs and applications, and they both have quite similar hardware requirements, while they also support various types of hardware components, so they really work great on most modern computers. And now, if you're searching in online forums or on YouTube what people are saying about Unraid or TrueNAS, you will soon learn that they both have their strong believers and fans, but also their strong haters, which probably isn't a big surprise to you, because yeah, on tech YouTube I think these days it's all about love or hate for this or another system, but yeah, that's just another observation I had. Most likely the biggest controversy about Unraid is the licensing, because this is a proprietary system that has a subscription-based model. So if you want to use Unraid, you have to buy a license which costs from $50 to $250 depending on how many drives you wish to connect and how long you want to get support and updates. And that's what I think most people criticize about Unraid in the first place, because TrueNAS Scale, on the other hand, this is completely free and open source, so just take a guess what people generally like more. It should be a no-brainer, but I think it is a bit short-sighted to see it this way, because free and open source is not always better, and Unraid definitely has a few unique features that might be worth considering paying the extra money. For example, one of those unique features is that the operating system boots from a USB drive. So in my opinion, this is a huge advantage of Unraid because you don't need to install the OS on a separate hard drive like you would have to do on TrueNAS or on most other operating systems. So you can use all the drives you got on a system completely for storage, which is pretty nice, especially if you're running Unraid on a smaller home server where you don't have that many interfaces and you don't want to sacrifice an entire disk for just the OS. However, to be fair, some people also dislike this feature because they say it's stupid that the license of Unraid is tied to a USB drive and not to the motherboard, or that the USB drives are generally not as reliable as magnetic hard drives or SSDs and they get broken from time to time. On this topic, I honestly don't have any long-term experience. I didn't have any issues with my USB drive so far, but of course, I'm only using it for a couple of months, so time will tell if it's gonna be a problem. But anyway, because of this, I was quite thrilled about Unraid running on a USB drive. As I have explained it in my storage server video, I could then use the one and only NVMe slot on my motherboard entirely for my hard drive storage controller and the PCI Express slot for a 10 gigabit network card. Which again makes Unraid, in my opinion, a much better choice for smaller systems. But of course, if you're planning a big storage server with plenty of PCI slots and interfaces, of course you'll be fine with any of those systems. But let's also go in a bit more detail on probably the most important part of a NAS operating system, the storage features, of course. And this is a quite interesting comparison here because both Unraid and TrueNAS Scale have very powerful features for bundling multiple hard drives together to build reliable storage, but they approach it in a very different way. Unraid, for example, uses a parity-based storage solution, which is called the Unraid Array, where users can mix and match different sizes of drives and even file systems, protected by one or two parity drives that allow you to reconstruct data in case of a drive failure. This flexibility is quite appealing to people who may have various drives lying around and just want to maximize their available storage capacity while they still have a solid data protection. It is also a very power-efficient approach because the data is spread across the different drives, which operate independently, meaning you can spin down each drive, and this reduces the overall power consumption of the system drastically, because where in RAID systems you typically write or read the data from multiple drives at the same time, you always need to have all the drives available, and in the Unraid Array that is not the case, only when you need to access that particular drive. However, as you can imagine, this Unraid Array also comes with a few downsides here, because it doesn't provide as much throughput as RAID systems, and it doesn't have any native cache functionality. Also, if you're using the XFS file system, which is usually the default for the Unraid Array, then you can't take any snapshots of your data to go back in time. For example, if you accidentally changed or deleted files. As I said, this is a great way to maximize your storage capacity in an easy way, but it definitely lacks some advanced features you would typically expect from a professional NAS system. However, Unraid has also some other storage options available. For example, when you want to use storage pools. And those storage pools in Unraid support software RAID file systems like BTRFS, and in the recent versions of Unraid they also introduced the powerful ZFS file system, which allows you, in addition to the Unraid Array, combine disks in different types of fixed layouts like striped, mirrored or parity pools, and they of course offer a much higher throughput, and they also provide you some advanced features like a reliable and self-healing data pool. Of course, this comes at a cost of higher CPU, memory and power usage though, and it requires to have disks of identical sizes, but I absolutely love that Unraid gives you all these choices and options and lets you decide so what matters more to you, throughput and reliability or flexibility and power consumption. You can even, of course, use the best of both worlds in Unraid, for example having a big Unraid Array with magnetic hard drives while adding a faster ZFS pool on SSDs or NVMEs as a cache. By the way, in my Unraid tutorial video, I've explored 3 of the most common options for creating redundant storage in Unraid, and I've explained all the pros and cons of those combinations. If you would like to learn more about it, of course, I will put your link to this video in the description box down below. But now, let's come to TrueNAS Scale, which follows a quite different approach by focusing heavily on just one specific file system, the software RAID file system ZFS. I know there are also technically other file systems supported in TrueNAS, but the ZFS implementation is definitely the preferred one. And boy, this is absolutely incredible. Honestly, it is far more mature than the ZFS implementation in Unraid. For example, it gives you many more options for managing snapshots directly from the web UI, or managing replication options, or easily configure deduplication. And they also have other advanced features for performance tuning, like adding additional zlog or slog drives that will increase the performance of read and write operations. You can also monitor any of the performance metrics directly in the TrueNAS Scale web UI, which gives you much more visibility into your storage pool performance. Now, to be fair, Unraid is constantly adding more and more features into their web UI to getting close to it, but it doesn't feel as good as it is on TrueNAS, yeah, let's be honest. Which of course shouldn't be a big surprise, since ZFS is and was always the key technology in TrueNAS for storage, and in Unraid, well, it's just one of those newer features and options that was recently added. So as a conclusion, I would say Unraid is better for smaller systems and home servers, because if you want to use the Unraid array technology, it gives you many nice advantages like lower hardware requirements, mixed disks of any size, lower power consumption and so forth. But if your goal is to build a faster, mighty and reliable storage pool, even though it might cost you a little more, then ZFS is the better technology, and here the TrueNAS system is just the better and more mature choice. Now let's also take a look at another very important aspect when it comes to storage, and this is about how easy it is to configure and how the web UI generally works. Because what you will directly notice about the Unraid web UI and the configuration is that doing things here feels generally more beginner-friendly and simple than in TrueNAS Scale. It also has a very nice dashboard that gives you a great overview of your system, and it has some cool customization options. It is also pretty straightforward to configure network shares and permissions in Unraid. However, beginner-friendly and simple doesn't automatically mean it's better. One thing, for example, that I was really upset about was that the Unraid web UI feels at the one or another place a bit outdated and clunky. It also doesn't have a responsive design, so it doesn't work well on mobile devices. And overall, the TrueNAS Scale web UI just looks more modern, it has a responsive design, and it also feels to have more features for configuring. For example, if you like to inspect details about the performance metrics of your devices and storage pools, or you can directly manage ZFS snapshots in the web UI, which is not possible in Unraid. And even though configuring network shares might be a bit more complicated in TrueNAS because you have more options, that also means you can really drill into most of the details here and configure permissions on a directory or file level, for example, using access control lists and so on. Just to name a few of those examples. So many of those advanced configuration settings that are existing in TrueNAS Scale are missing in Unraid. But again, it comes down to what you prefer. So if you want a simple and beginner-friendly system, then Unraid might be better for you. If you're okay with that it can get a bit more complex to configure, but you really like to have a modern and feature-rich NAS OS, then TrueNAS Scale is probably better. I bet you can see where it's getting along, but wait, it's not all about storage and configuration in Unraid and TrueNAS, because even though they are primarily used as NAS operating systems, they also give you some options for running applications and virtual machines, and that's also something you have to take in consideration. Honestly, I can't say too much about running virtual machines in Unraid or TrueNAS because I haven't really used it myself a lot. But as both systems are using Linux KVM under the hood, they are pretty similar in that aspect. And as KVM is a pretty reliable technology that is also used in many other systems, for example, Proxmox also uses KVM, this is definitely a great technology they are both built on. As a result, running virtual machines in Unraid or TrueNAS Scale is pretty straightforward. You can configure all the expected things like network settings, disk settings, and pass through USB or PCI devices. Of course, they don't play in the same league as Proxmox or VMware does. But if all you want is to run one or more Windows or maybe Linux distributions beside your NAS operating systems, then you can do this in Unraid or TrueNAS pretty well. And for most people, this will definitely be enough. Again, running virtual machines on a NAS operating system has never been a huge interest of mine. Instead, what I think is much more interesting to take a look at is how they perform when you want to run applications. For example, if you like to build a media server or run a few self-hosted services like Pi-hole, a database server, and so on. And that's where it gets a bit more interesting in my opinion. Now, historically, TrueNAS Scale was originally advertised to feature a built-in Kubernetes container orchestrator that lets you easily run applications with a one-click deployment. You can say I was at first very excited about this idea because it means you can easily set up and run a Kubernetes cluster for all your application deployments, but without having to deal with all the details and complexity of this technology. However, if you be honest, that plan didn't seem to work out pretty well for TrueNAS because the community wasn't pleased about that decision, since Kubernetes is a quite complex technology and for running a few applications on a NAS may be a complete overkill. And as a result, you don't find that many applications to deploy from the TrueNAS Scale integrated App Store, and IX Systems themselves have just recently announced to change the back-end technology and switch from Kubernetes to Docker Compose in TrueNAS Scale, which I have to say is, in my opinion, absolutely the right decision. This should give the community a much easier technology to work with, and of course, it's better to pull the plug right now and make sure the application deployments on TrueNAS Scale are getting better and better over time. That being said, I don't think running applications on TrueNAS Scale is bad or broken. Yeah, for most common applications like a Plex media server, Pi-hole or things like that, you will easily find one-click apps from the App Store. However, this back and forth with Kubernetes and now Docker Compose probably held back the development a little. And if you compare this to Unraid, a system that was using Docker right from the beginning when it was introduced, you can clearly see that the community support is obviously better here. And that totally makes sense because Unraid is and has always been a system made for home users. Just take a look at the numerous plugins and container applications you can install from the App Store in Unraid. It is also super easy to deploy and configure Docker applications in Unraid. What also should be noticed, with plugins, the Unraid community goes even a bit further than just application deployments, because those plugins can even customize and install things on the host operating system itself, which is really great for adding more features and functionalities to Unraid that don't exist in the OS by default. However, honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of that feature because at the end of the day, it's all made by the community, so by one or two random people, and you really never know how well the application or the plugin you install is maintained by them. Again, we are at the same conclusion here. I think for a home server, where storage is not your one and only priority, you also want to run a few self-hosted applications and extend the functionality of your system, Unraid seems to be a better choice here because you have a much broader app catalog and many more community plugins. But if you don't really care about running applications or customizing things on the host OS, you just want a fast, powerful and reliable NAS with advanced professional features for storage, well then TrueNAS Scale is just the better option in my opinion. So yeah, I think this should give you an idea for what types of people those systems are built for and for what use case Unraid or TrueNAS Scale is better. Again, despite all the love and hate, I think they are both great platforms. Hopefully this video helped you a bit with your decision making and what team you want to be on. Now it's your turn, so please tell me what system you like more, and if you would like to support all the free tutorials and content I'm creating, then please don't forget to check out my Patreon page and maybe consider becoming a part of our awesome community. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'm going to catch you in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.